Yo, welcome back to the Boost Seat Sports Pod. We're just two bros smarter than the average Joe, wanting to get our thoughts out there. What a week in sports it's been, Griffin.
Yeah, especially this weekend. Got a lot of good games to talk about.
We had a lot of NBA action during the week, and then some great championship games this weekend in the NFL. So let's just start. KC Baltimore.
Yeah, like I said, um, it was gonna be a defensive battle. I didn't think it was gonna be the case that early on. With both of them scoring on their opening drive, I was like, oh, well, there goes my prediction. But the defense actually came to play after the first drives. Mahomes looked amazing, like always. I know there's a lot of speculation and doubt with the wide receivers and all that. And just
Yeah,
like them being in a down year, there wasn't any. They didn't have a home game in the playoffs for the first time ever. A lot of doubt, but they came through, and Kelsey had one of the best games he's had all year. And I think what surprised me the most was the Chiefs' defense holding the Ravens to only 10 points. I did not think that was going to happen. I thought maybe the most the Ravens would score, or the least the Ravens would score, would probably be 17. But to only have 10 on the number one seed, like that's really impressive.
yeah. The Ravens offense struggled. The KC defense played great, so that's just a recipe for disaster if you're Baltimore. If you also look, Baltimore's two turnovers in the red zone were killers. The Zay Flowers fumble that Willie Snead hit out right on the goal line. He's just got to get down. Like he has a touchdown. If he just falls down at the one, they got four attempts to run it, and you're not stopping Lamar Jackson on a tush push four times in a row. So that really stung. And then also Lamar Jackson thrown into triple coverage to likely over the middle. That's just something you can't do. But it's Lamar Jackson. He's the MVP. You can't play at an MVP caliber for that many games in a season, and he finally had his game where he struggled. But the Kansas City Chiefs played amazing. Griff said that Patrick Mahomes and the wide receivers stepped up this weekend. Patty started 11 for 11 to start the game, and that's on Patrick Mahomes because like he's the one putting the ball there, but his wide receivers have to make plays too. Like Kelsey had 8 receptions in the first half, but Valdez Scantley, Rice, even Pacheco were making plays, and Valdez Scantley had that really big catch at the end of the game that it was basically the same catch he dropped to lose to the Eagles earlier in the year. And that shows that Andy Reid really got those boys going and a mindset to just go out there and win, and they want to come and defend their title next week.
Yeah, a few things also I'd like to add is that the Ravens' offensive game plan, I thought they were going to come out with something better than that. If you look at the box score, the Ravens only had 8 designed run plays the entire game. I don't know where the thought process of that working came into play, especially with a Chiefs defense that has really struggled against the run all year. So I couldn't really understand why that was. And also, like you said, the turnovers. I thought that anytime they got momentum, like something like that would happen. Like obviously, the pass over the middle was inexcusable. Like you definitely gotta find anybody better open than that. Like you're throwing into triple coverage. I know that could have been a pass interference in the end, but like it was so covered. I don't even think it should have been called, and I think they made the right decision. But
Yeah,
I just thought that the Ravens, for being the number one seed in the AFC, went out and sucked.
yeah, definitely laid a goose egg. Uh, I know the game's gonna when you look at it, you're gonna blame people like Zay Flowers and a lot of people blaming Lamar. He can't win in the playoffs, but Zay Flowers was great, and that was like his one mishap of the night. Obviously, the Ravens shot themselves in the foot the whole game. 4 personal fouls. You can't win a game going out there and giving the other team 60 yards on 4 penalties. It's unexcusable. The Zay Flowers one was bad, but at the same time, Zay Flowers was their offense. Other than Lamar throwing it to the backside of the backfield, there was nothing going. KC Pacheco was running hard the first half, and they had the Ravens number, and it showed in the box scores. And KC's gonna be playing for a Super Bowl.
I was really impressed with Pacheco's involvement as well because, obviously Patrick Mahomes, can do whatever he wants usually. But I thought Pacheco coming in and making a big role probably threw the Ravens defense off a little bit, probably because they thought Mahomes was going to do everything, and I did too. I thought this was either going to be the Chiefs losing or Mahomes literally carrying the entire city of Kansas City. But Pacheco and obviously his wide receivers stepped up big, and I think they just wanted it more. I think they've been in that scenario before, and they know how to win. And I think the Ravens, time and time again, they've gotten into these good scenarios of making it to the Super Bowl, and they always fall short. So, I just think it's just the Mahomes effect of knowing how to win.
Yeah. Let's send it over to the NFC. Detroit choked a 24-7 lead going into halftime. The offense was rolling. They came out of the gate going. 49ers came out in the second half though, 17 in the third quarter, and that really shifted the momentum. And Detroit mental mistakes. Dan Campbell some questionable calls that we'll talk about here in a second. But the 49ers win 34-31.
Yeah, definitely didn't see that coming. I thought the Lions, like I said last week, I thought they were going to keep it close or get blown out, and quite the opposite happened in the first half. I was like, wow, this team really wants to win, and I thought that they were going to be able to hold it, but I should have known because Detroit has lived and died on the all aggressive play style, whether you're up by 30 or you're down by 30. So, you know, playing the clock out and securing a second half is probably the hardest thing that they can do just because of their play style. Like you have Dan Campbell going for fourth downs. I mean, you have their defense in the second half just forgot to show up,
Mhm.
and like you said, the questionable calls. I would say that there was a lot of reliance on the passing game in the second half. I thought the run game was their bread and butter. I didn't
Yeah.
think Goff looked that great. I think they just got off to such a big lead that they kind of forgot how to play football in the second half.
Yeah, and I did mention last week I took Detroit 31-24, but I said in last week's pod that Detroit will win this game if they cannot allow the 49ers to score 30 points. And that is exactly what happened. And if you talk about Dan Campbell, I know there's a lot of hate going around on social media, but the Lions are in the NFC Championship game because of the motto that Dan Campbell brings to the team and the way they play. Like they're not making it this far if they don't play with that swagger and aggressiveness, and that is Detroit. So if you're Detroit, I wouldn't hang your head because you missed these two fourth downs. Yes, you could have kicked a 48-yard field goal, I think, but at the end of the day, that's not you. Like if you're a team that kicks 150 extra points in a year and you don't go for two, you're not going to go for two to win the game. You're going to take the field goal to tie the game and go into overtime. That's how you play. That's what you're going to do. Also wanted to talk about Purdy because in the first half Purdy was not great. He threw a pick. Should have had two picks. But in the second half, Ayuk came alive. Ayuk was huge for them. Um, Purdy not only doing it with his arms, doing it with his legs. I don't think Purdy's ran for that much in a game ever. It's not a stat. It's what I think. Um, and also, we talked last week that Debo was 50-50 with a shoulder injury. And even though Debo, if you look at the stat sheet, Debo Samuel really didn't do much, but they were talking with Kyle Shanahan, and he talked about that their playbook is three times bigger with him in. And I think just him being there and being a presence on the field is the reason that when the second half, when he was on the field, that they were able to go out there and make plays because he was able to take a corner one or a corner two off of Ayuk or Kittle or Jennings, and even CMC. It was an all around great game plan by Stefanski in the second half, and I think the 49ers deserve it coming over that, like climbing that mountain.
He met Shanahan.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Um, yeah, I think the 49ers, like just like the Chiefs did, I just think they wanted it more. You go into halftime down 17. Obviously, that's not easy to do in any game, but on a stage like the NFC Championship game, while Shanahan has that insane record of not being able to come back from second half deficits, like it really showed to who they are as a team this year. I thought, as soon as you get out of the second half, like it just everything was clicking. They went down, immediately scored a field goal, and then capitalized off of every single one of Detroit's mistakes. I don't know whether to pin it on Detroit just forgetting how to play football or the 49ers coming out and playing lights
Hmm.
out, because I think it was a combination of both. Like you said, Purdy, I've never seen a white guy that mobile in my life. He was running all over the place. Every third down, he always like no one spied on him because he's white, and he just gets out and he goes and he gets a first down every single time they needed him to. And you had Jennings with that incredible one-handed catch to keep the momentum going for the 49ers, and just
Hmm.
everybody came to play. When you needed a big catch, Kittle was there. If you needed a big run to score a touchdown deep in the red zone, you had McCaffrey. So I think everyone that needed to came alive in the second half,
Hmm.
and Detroit had no answer themselves. So
Yeah.
I just thought the better team won.
And if I'm Detroit, yes, you lost in a championship game. The fashion they did is horrible, but Detroit hasn't experienced this since '57. Like this has been a downhill train for them ever since then, and they finally got some momentum. And you had four key players, all rookies. Four key players that were rookies. It's a young team, besides some pieces, but they're going to be back here next year. The division, it's just them and Green Bay. I don't see the Vikings being a, a great team next year. Maybe a slide into the playoffs. I don't think they're that great. And so I say if you're Detroit, you got to go back to the drawing board, figure some stuff out. But I want to talk about the second half again. The way I looked at it is Detroit came out in the second half playing not to lose the game. They were not playing like the game was 0-0, like we got to score, let's just keep racking up points. They were playing not to lose the game. They were playing the clock. In the first quarter, they averaged 9.5 yards a carry. That is insane. And in the second half, they went away from the run game and they relied on the pass game. And for them, you play to you play to win the game. You play to not lose the game. And
Right.
I think that's something that could be a factor on what happened. But at the end of the day, we're gonna have a Super Bowl rematch in and on February 11th.
Yeah, I think one more thing before we move on from that game. Just Detroit in general obviously has one of the brightest futures in the NFL. Like you said, with four rookies making a big impact this year, and I if I'm a Detroit fan, I wouldn't worry at all. Like, you made it to the NFC Championship. I know it's hard to get back there, but at least you know that this team has life, it has fight, and as long as Dan Campbell is there, it's going to keep doing that. So I
Yeah.
think you have a lot of more years ahead of you of this same play, and I hope that this is a lesson for this team going forward, to never let off the gas, because you live or die by the aggression. So never let off the gas, no matter how much you're up. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we can look at next week's Super Bowl. Um, San Francisco right now is favored by 1.5 points over the Chiefs. Surprising to me, to be honest.
yeah, with how bad San Francisco looked in the first half, I am a little shocked that the Chiefs aren't favored. Um, I still wasn't very impressed with the 49ers defense that has been way better than this all year. So I would probably say the Chiefs are favored to me,
Hmm.
but I can see why they probably made the 49ers favored, just by that second half alone. Like, everyone was playing well, and I don't think you could beat a team like that when they're playing well. So I guess we'll see when the game starts, but I'd say the Chiefs probably have a chip.
Yeah, and it's not just this week that the 49ers got off to a slow start. Last week against the Packers, they did the same thing, and they had to
Yeah.
rally in the second half to come back and win that game. And if the Chiefs come out like they have the last 3 weeks, like if they come out firing like they have, I don't see a third comeback in the second half. It would be crazy, but I just
Yeah.
don't see that happening. And the Chiefs are going to become the first team to win back-to-back Super Bowls in 20 years. So they're chasing history. Mahomes is chasing a legacy, and it's going to be hard to go beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to play the Chiefs in any type of game. I just Reed and Mahomes, they just know how to win games, whether it's close and you need a defensive stop, or whether you're down by 7 and you need Mahomes to go down and score. I just think they've been around the block for so long, and they just know each other so well, that if you want to beat them in any playoff game or just a regular season game in general, you're going to have to come up with a way to neutralize not only Mahomes but Reed as well. So you're going to have to come out there with better play calling, which is already hard enough, and then you have to outplay Mahomes too.
Hmm.
It's just super hard for any team to do both in the same game. And if it's anybody can do it, I would say that Kyle Shanahan is probably going to be one of those people.
Yeah.
But like I said last week, versus like the NFC Championship game, I said the better quarterback's going to win that game. And obviously Purdy didn't show up that well in the first
Yeah.
half, but that second half made him the better quarterback in that game and was the main reason the 49ers even won that game. So,
Hmm.
in my head, Mahomes is a million times the better quarterback. So you already have that chip on your shoulder. So I think Shanahan is going to have to come up with one of his best play calling jobs he's
Yeah.
ever had.
And the 49ers are going to have to find a way to win. Over the last 5, 6 years, they've been like the second to third best team in the NFL every year. They have the second to third best record, and they just can't win the games that matter. They lose in the conference championship, they lose in the Super Bowl, and this would be huge for the 49ers if they can come out in here and win their first Super Bowl since '94. And then um, last thing I have to say is if Mahomes goes and wins this Super Bowl, is this does this make him like a top 2 or 3 greatest quarterback of all time?
I think with 3 Super Bowls and then 4 Super Bowls in 5 years, just appearances, I think you're probably looking at that top three for sure. I think probably Joe Montana and Tom Brady will obviously have a better record
Hmm.
and just like more accolades than him, but they played a full career. So uh, as of now, I would say Mahomes is definitely top three because just the insanity of the plays that he makes on a daily basis and how well his teams do, even when they struggle and don't have a home game playoffs. I mean, they did, but going on the road against two really tough opponents and still getting it done when everyone said you couldn't.
Hmm.
And I know they've been kind of the team that no one wants to watch. Like they're the new Patriots. When in 2018, they were the ones that were going to stop the Patriots, and now they are the Patriots. And it's one of those situations where it's you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. So
Do we
I
want to
think
make predictions for this week? Sorry, I cut you off at the end.
no, you're fine.
I read your breath wrong.
No, you're good. Prediction.
Yeah.
I don't know the score yet. I'll keep thinking about the score, but I think the Chiefs will win.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
no, you're
I
good.
I counted out the Chiefs last week and it was a bad decision on my part, but I also thought the 49ers were not a team that was going to be in the Super Bowl anyways, and I definitely think the Chiefs win this game and I think it's close, but I think they still win by like 7. So, I'm just going to follow up with the score I used last week, 24-17 Chiefs. And I think it's a dominant performance by the Chiefs. I think the 49ers score on like a turnover, but I think the Chiefs go in there and just dominate and win another Super Bowl.
Yeah, we'll get into this later, but I think you're gonna see probably Mahomes' best game of his career, possibly in this game. I think the 49ers will probably shut down the running game, and Mahomes is gonna have to do everything on his own. I think he'll probably have 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and I think the 49ers are gonna lose by 10 plus.
Yeah.
That could be a wrong. I could totally have misjudged the situation, but I think the 49ers have looked super mortal in all of their playoff appearances, and the Chiefs are just them. So
Yep.
I don't see.
I
I
would
see
agree.
the 49ers are gonna have to play perfect if they want to win. So and then I don't see that happening. So
Yeah. Um Next up is the NBA this week. The NBA has been insane this week. 460 plus point performances in 5 days, including a 270 point performances. More than 60 points this week. More than more 60-point games this week. Oh shoot, I am so sorry. They had more 60-point games this week than 2009 2015 combined. I guess we can just start with the Lakers Warriors game.
yeah, I had the privilege of watching this. I didn't get to see the beginning, but I saw the fourth quarter and obviously the two overtimes.
Hmm.
Like LeBron, I know he's just been playing good for this long that people just kind of have forgotten how good he is. But I mean, he can do at 39 years old,
Yeah.
and you're doing this. That is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it's not even just him. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off today, but it's not even just him. Like Curry's 35, and they went out there and battled for 50 minutes, and for them both to combine for 82 points is amazing to watch, and I'm here for it. We're not going to be able to watch this for forever. So the fact that you got to watch it and I watched it on Gamecast, but the fact that we got to witness that, that's greatness. Like LeBron dropped to 36, 20, and 12. That's not something a 39-year-old does, and that's not something a regular star does.
yeah,
So to be able to watch that was insane.
and I think the LeBron and Steph rivalry is definitely
Yeah.
hindered ever since the finals games, and those were always lopsided because of KD joining the Warriors and all that. But I mean, even when both teams are like not even top 10 in their conferences, they can still make games feel important. So I mean, yeah, like what you said, just never take this for granted. They won't be here very much longer, and both of them just had an absolute masterclass.
Hmm. Now we're gonna get into some of the big games, like scoring games of the week. Timberwolves Hornets. Cat dropped 62 points and was benched for the final 3 minutes of the game. Um, but he became the first player to have 10 threes, 10 twos, and 10 free throws in a game, which to me is crazy. The fact that that's 20 shots right there on top of the 10 free throws. That is very impressive from Cat, a dude that's a big man that we know can light it up from three. He's won 3-point contest, but he also did it from the inside with Rudy Gobert there. I'm surprised he got the touches, but that's just insane that he got subbed out in the last 3 minutes in a close game to the Hornets.
Yeah, that's just a terrible way to end a good night for just the whole team. I mean, on that we'll just talk about his points. That is incredible that he is the first person to do that. 10 threes, that in its own is very impressive. And then yeah, it's just out of nowhere has like a horrible fourth quarter. I think he had like 8 turnovers
Hmm.
in the game, and when you get subbed out with 3 minutes left against a team that is really bad and you still lose, like
Yeah,
I mean, I know the Timberwolves are good this year, but like what a terrible loss. And I think it was at home too.
yeah.
So
And
yeah,
the Hornets
embarrassing.
were down 18 when Cat won that cold streak and they climbed back and won. But in my opinion, as a coach, if you have a dude that has 62 points and he's on your bench with 3 minutes left, I don't care if he's missed his last 8 shots. That dude has scored 62 points tonight, and you're not going to put him out there and put the ball in his hands to win the game. Eh, I I just don't understand why you would want him out there even over Gobert. Gobert's not an offensive weapon, and you're gonna put Cat on the bench. And Anthony Edwards had a bad night too. So it's not like you had anyone else on the team that had a hot hand. It was just Cat, and you sat him on the bench for the last 3 minutes. That's an embarrassing L, if I had to say so.
Yeah, if good players, even if they have a bad night, they'll hit clutch shots. And I don't understand why you would take him out. I know he was struggling, but at the same time, you need some type of spark. And a person that has 62 points is probably going to offer you a spark.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, no one else, like you said, Ant had a bad game, and Gobert can't really score. I mean, he's more
Mhm.
of a defensive guy. So yeah, I mean, that's what a terrible way to lose at home to a really
Yeah.
bad team. That's just it.
Um, on the same night though, 76ers Spurs, the first Embiid Wembanyama matchup. Embiid decides to go out and drop 70 points and 18 rebounds.
That is a crazy stat line, and I think it was the first game ever to drop. Was it 70, 15, and 5? I
Yeah.
think was the stat.
Yep.
I mean, what an incredible performance. I mean, I know it's the Spurs, but still, to do any like a stat line in that in NBA, I don't
Mhm.
care how bad the team is so impressive.
Yeah, and at this point, Embiid's just the front runner to win his second straight MVP. I mean, the man's averaging 36, 11, and 5. That is insane for a dude that's 7 feet tall. And Jokic had a down year, and there's really nobody else other than Luka that's competing with him for the MVP. And at this point, at the rate he's playing, I don't see a world where he doesn't go and win his second straight MVP, which is going to be cool because the NBA has that would be the third straight back-to-back MVPs, and there's no way that's ever happened before in the NBA,
Yeah, no way.
and they're all big men.
Yeah, it's all big men too. I was about to say that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think earlier in the decade it was all like uh, guards, like shooting guards and small forwards that were having this era of dominance in terms of MVPs and all that. But I
Hmm.
think now you're starting to switch to more of a big man league. I mean, it was bound to happen when you have a big man that's taller than everybody else that can shoot, that can create plays and get back on defense. I mean, obviously there's going to be a high demand, and when you're good, you're really good. So
And the dude on the other side of the court from Embiid was Wimby, who dropped 33. It was respectable. I did see some clips of Embiid backing him down and really taking him to the rack, but this Embiid, Wembanyama, and any big man matchups, Jokic, Embiid, Jokic, Wembanyama, even Bam. Like I know Bam's not in Anthony Davis. I know they're not having Anthony Davis having a good year, but Bam is a 20 points a night type of guy. But these big man matchups in the NBA right now are super fun to watch because of the fact that they can score anywhere on the floor. And that's just something that the game's coming to, as Griff said. If you can put a Steph Curry in a 6'11 frame, that's what we're seeing coming through college, and that's what we're seeing coming internationally, and that's just the way the game's moving. Just bigger with skill is the way it's going. And speaking of Luca, Luca dropped 73 3 nights later to top Embiid.
yeah, uh, that game was awesome. I've never seen. That's probably one of the greatest games I've ever seen from a player. The only thing else I could think of is Kobe's 81, but even then, I was like 1 years old when he did that, so obviously I
Yeah,
didn't watch it. But 75% from the field is insane for 73 points.
yeah,
I mean, he did that all on his own. He didn't need bad calls to get a bunch of free throws. Like it was just him.
yeah.
And when you do stuff like that, I think him and Embiid, like you said, are definitely the top two. I would give it to Luca. I think he's doing is more impressive.
Hmm.
I know Embiid's big and he's scoring a lot of points, but when you're doing that as a smaller frame, on a team that has less uh, talent around them, that I think you should probably get rewarded with an MVP for that.
Yeah, and the case you can make for Luca, obviously, I think he's averaging like 32, 33, is also Kyrie doesn't play half of the time. Embiid has Harris, Maxey, and he has great role players coming off the bench. And Dallas really doesn't, and they're in a spot right now where they're in the playoffs. So I think that's a case you can make for Luca. But 25 for 33 from the field is insane. And of course, Kyrie didn't play that night, so Luca had to go out there and do something. And he's just winning games for the Mavs. Like the 76ers don't need Joel Embiid to go win them a game. They have the stars around him to go do that. But the way that Luca's playing is out of this world,
Yeah, and they won too.
and
So
they won. Um, another 60-point performance that ended in a loss. Devin Booker, 62 points in a loss. It's not uncommon for Booker. This is his third straight loss when scoring 60 points, and that's dating back to the 70 against the Celtics a couple years ago. And the way I look at it is, yes, the 76ers have stars on their team, but the Suns have greats on their team, and I don't think you can go out there and score 62 with Kevin Durant on the floor, and like Kevin Durant has to have the ball in his hands too if you want to go win a game. And I just think with the team they have, LeBron wasn't scoring 70 points when he was in Miami on the Big Three. It was spread across the board. That's how they went and won games. and Devin Booker. And I've watched Devin Booker play. He's a streaky player. Sometimes him and Tatum are two that I like because when they're in the zone, they're in the zone and they're going to go out there and they're going to go get you buckets. But at the same time, if they're not the center of attention, they're not going to do anything for you. So I think that's something the Suns have to work on and fix is who has the ball in their hands at the time they have the ball in their hands because obviously Devin Booker going out there and scoring 62 points isn't working for him.
Yeah, and I think another argument to be made is I think the age of the big threes and getting as much talent in the starting five as possible is probably going to come to an end because you're seeing teams like this who put all their chips to get Durant, Booker, and Beal on the same court. And when you do that, you're going to have to suffer in other places, which the bench is horrendous. If your top three people are not doing good and the bench can't help, like you're just not going to win games. And they're all going to want the ball. I mean, these are star players we're talking about. They need the ball to score.
Mm-hmm.
So when one of them has a good night like Booker and the other two, have to watch him have a good game. I mean, they're still playing good. It's just they can't make the impact that they usually do because they're a star player. You're not going to win as many games as, like I said, Embiid that has like two good players on his starting five and then a bunch of good role players that can fill in those gaps. I just I think the way of the big three is probably coming to an end. So
And in today's world too, with the skill and the youth level and up into collegiate levels, you're shooting your own self in the foot by doing this. Like, look at what the Clippers did. The Clippers brought in Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and shipped a bunch of stuff to OKC, and now OKC is the best team in the West. Like, a lot of these big threes are giving up so much to get these players. When in 2 years, those players that they gave up are all just gonna be great role players on teams that are going to win championships. I mean, that's what the Nuggets did last year. I know Jamal Murray was injured the first part of the year, but he got his stride the second part of the year, and Jokic was great. But a lot of those players are players that other teams didn't want because they wanted better players. But a Reggie Jackson, an Aaron Gordon, um, those are two names off the top of my head, were key players in winning a championship. But the Clippers spent all their money on two-star players, and now they don't have any money to go pick up anybody. So it's embarrassing, but
yeah, it's you got to sell your soul for good players.
you got to
And
sell
if
your
they don't
soul for
work
good
out,
players. Yes.
if they don't work out, you just set your entire future to a team who's going to get role players and probably a star as well, like you saw in OKC.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're going to develop them, and they're going to be the best team in your conference, and you're going to be left wondering where you went wrong. So
And last thing before we move on to these next couple NBA things is if you want to start a super team, you have to be under the impression that you're all in now and you have to win now. That is why the
yeah,
Warriors won and were a successful super team. That is why Miami won and was a successful super team. Because once you buy in, your future is not great. That's why the Warriors went through a couple year drought with Curry's injuries. Who they have when Curry got injured? Nobody, because they sold everybody out. So you have to be ready to win now. And the Clippers were not ready to win now. The Suns are not ready to win now. And I think as a franchise, you just waste a couple years of developing players that you could have drafted.
yeah,
But on a side note, the Cavs have won 9 out of their last 10 without Mobley and Garland. Mitchell is stepping up and is playing some of the best basketball he's ever played.
yeah. You saw before they got injured, there was a lot of rumors they didn't get off to a good start. Um, there was a lot of rumors that they were going to give Donovan, they were going to trade him, try to get some pieces. Didn't seem like there was a lot good going on in the Cavs locker room. And then when they get injured, this team just decides, okay, well we're going to win anyways. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
role players on that team. Like this is just proving the point we've already stated. You got role players on the that they can just hit threes at will, and then you have your guys like Mitchell and Allen. They can just go and give you 20, 30 a night, and then your role players can finish it up. And that's stuff you don't really see often is just a good spread of points through
Mm-hmm.
all the bench and the starters that you don't really see. in the NBA much anymore because of this whole sell your soul for really good players
Yeah.
idea.
And the team that handed the Cavs their one loss in that 10-game span, the Bucks fired Griffin, who started the season 30-13, but reports came out that Giannis had lost all trust in him, and he got fired. And the Bucks turned around and hired Doc Rivers to a $40 million deal through 2027.
Yeah, what a crazy thing to do to a coach. I don't even know. I know there was, yeah, like you said, there was rumors about Giannis not liking him and all that, but Giannis came out and said that those weren't true. So why would you fire a coach that got you to 30-13? I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
Like that does not make any sense to me. I guess you're trying to find a spark,
Hmm.
but you're already up 30-13 in the season, and you're pretty much automatically in the playoffs with that. So I
Yeah.
don't get that at all. And then to replace him with Doc Rivers is also interesting. I
Yeah.
know he's been on a lot of good teams, but he actually had a funny quote. I can't remember the full quote off the top of my head, but he says it's definitely not going to be easy to take a team that was 30 and
Yeah.
13 in the middle of the season. So
Yeah. He said, "I wouldn't wish
he's a
this
little
upon
nervous.
anybody."
Yeah, he wouldn't
But
wish that upon anybody. So that's a great thing to say about a 30-13 team.
yeah.
It's yeah, they're acting like this is like a disappointing season, and it's like why? Like yeah, you're behind the Celtics a little bit, but you're still like one of the best teams in the NBA.
But the
I don't get
Celtics
it.
started 20-0 at home in the year, so there's not much you can do about that. Last basketball note of the day. LeBron inches closer to 40K career points. He's sitting at 39,704, 296 away. Um, Probably get it in 10 to 15 games, if I had to guess.
Isn't that insane?
It's 40,000 points is insane.
40,000 points for anybody. Like yeah, I know like Kareem played. I don't even know how long Kareem played for, and uh, I I bet no one at his time thought anyone would surpass any of his records.
Hmm.
Six championships, like so many All Star appearances, and LeBron just passed that too. And he has like 20 All Star appearances, which is actually absurd.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's just doing things that literally will never happen again, like ever. So,
Mhm.
congrats to him, obviously.
Congrats, LeBron. Back to the NFL. Coaching carousel. Last week we talked a lot on who we think was going to get hired and where at. Last week we only had Antonio Pierce as a hire, but this week a lot went down in the NFL when
A
in
lot of hires.
regards to hiring coaches. We can start with the Panthers. The Panthers hired Dave Channels.
Yeah, Bucks offense coordinator.
Yep.
Um, little head scratching. I guess with Baker, I think they did have, I'd say overall a decent offensive performance through this season. But at the same time, I didn't see anything with the Bucks offense that was particularly like head coach worthy. When you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin as your wide receivers, I think whoever quarterback you have, you're going to have some success. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that he's not going to be a good head coach. Anything can happen in this league. So I was just a little concerned as to why they picked the Bucks offensive coordinator. They must have seen something in him that none of us do on the outside. But uh, out of anyone that got hired this past week, I'm gonna say that he's probably gonna be the first to get fired.
Yeah. We talked about it right after the hiring, and I brought up the point that he's going into a team with a horrible offense this past year. Not really much upside on that offense other than Bryce Young, Adam Thielen, but no upside on that offense. It's not like he's coming into a team that has pieces and they just weren't able to win games. So he's definitely going to have to do his recruiting. They're going to have a good draft. But I also said he could be fired by week 8. It's the Panthers. Their front office is not ran well or smart at all. So we'll see how far Dave goes. I wish the best for him. The NFL was good when the Panthers were good. That division's a lot funner when the Panthers are good. So let's hope he gets back to that. And the surprise hire this week, um, rumors were out that Bill Belichick and the Falcons were not looking like a possibility, and then a day later, the Falcons hire Raheem Morris, defensive coordinator of the Rams.
Yeah. We were just talking about the Falcons either going in that direction or the Bill Belichick direction, and apparently the rumor is that the Falcons didn't want to commit to Belichick because Belichick wanted full control, and I don't think the Falcons were willing to give that. But yeah, with Raheem Morris, you're getting a defensive guy that definitely showed promise as a head coach in
Mm-hmm.
LA. I mean, his team went to the playoffs. I know they didn't win, but they definitely had a good showing after starting 3-6. So I'm pretty optimistic about this hire. I think he'll be decent, better than Arthur Smith for sure. But yeah, I guess we'll see how he uses the weapons
Yeah.
rather than Arthur did.
I think it's just another McVay head coach coming from the McVay tree. Like you said, I think he'll be fine in that division if he uses the pieces he has smart and yeah, smart. If he comes in there and does what Arthur Smith did, he's not going to last long. But I think the Falcons have a team that can win games and compete in big games. I think they have two or three positions that need filled on the offense and the defense. But I think they're a team that's right there, and this year's record really doesn't show that. But Raheem Morris can come in there. I think he's gonna have to have a little bit more of an offensive mind because the Falcons defense was pretty good this year. But if he can get a good OC in there, I think the Falcons will be a very good team next year.
Yeah, I agree. You get a quarterback and a good offense in there. I think yeah, you're not that far off of making a playoff appearance.
Yep. One that we expected came out a couple days after last week's pod. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Expected to bring his defensive coordinator from Michigan, Jesse Winters, with him. Winters has informed some players that he is going to take it, but it has not come out publicly. But this is one that we all saw. It was a good fit. Harbaugh started his coaching career in San Diego. Was coached in San Francisco. And overall, I think this is a good fit for the Chargers.
Yeah, like I said when we were talking about who the Chargers might possibly have as a head coach, I was talking about someone who could maybe instill some discipline and some winning mentality. And I think probably out of all the coaches except for Belichick, he was probably the guy to do that. Um, I think he was just like I said, he was just hyped up as a coaching
Mm-hmm.
prospect just because of what all he did
Yeah.
at Michigan. But I think he'll end up working obviously better than Staley. I think Staley was a dumpster fire. You go anyone
Yep.
other than Staley, you'll be fine. So I'm just curious to see what Jim Harbaugh does with this aging roster and cap situation.
Yep. And he's got to figure out his OC situation, but I'm sure his name in the coaching world is big enough that I'm sure he'll be able to land a good OC.
Yeah.
But the Chargers definitely should be better than they were with Staley. Titans. This is one that last week's pod, we filmed it last week, and right when we turned the podcast off, it was announced that Brian Callahan was hired as the Titans head coach. And if you watched last week's episode, Griffin actually said that Brian Callahan was the best fit for the Titans, and he thinks that they should hire him. So I'm gonna let you have the stage, Mr. Got It Right.
Thank you, appreciate it. With whoever they were publicly announcing they were interviewing, I just thought Bill Callahan made the most sense. We talked about Bobby
Slowick.
as the other guy. But obviously, like I said, I thought that Callahan had more experience of good seasons. So it did not shock me when they hired him. Um, I hope it goes well. The Bengals and their offense has been a little. I don't know if it was the players themselves making the offense good because as a Browns fan, I saw them absolutely shit the bed versus the division. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's just the division being the division or just them having a really bad scheme for the Browns and the Ravens and all that. But I think he'll be fine. It's just I do have some questions about if uh, it was him that was making the Bengals succeed or it was just the players.
And I picked Bobby Slowick last week. I do, looking back on it, think that Brian Callahan is the better hire. I only picked Slowick. I really liked his schemes this year, and I also wanted another youngest head coach in the NFL. But Brian Callahan has proven what he's done with Cincinnati has been great, and I think he, out of the candidates that they had interviewed, was definitely the best candidate available. And he's an established OC. And speaking of established OCs, uh, the OC in Detroit, Ben Johnson's expected to be rumored to be the next head coach in Washington.
Yeah, have fun with that one, buddy. Um, I don't. Other than having the title head coach, I don't see anything positive about taking this job. Your offensive line is horrible. Your defense got really bad because you traded all the way, all your pieces away, and then on top of that, you didn't get the first pick. So yeah, I don't see anything good in this at all. I mean, maybe the one positive is that you do have pretty solid wide receiver core along with a good OC in Eric Bieniemy. But
hmm
other than that, have fun trying to make this team good.
Yeah. I think Ron Rivera is not a good head coach, but
No,
he was a problem in Washington, but he was not the only problem. There's a lot of
no.
things in that organization that are not up to par, and I think Ben Johnson has had a great run in Detroit, and I think he's a great OC. I don't know if taking this job it's the best option for him, but I'm gonna ride it out and see what happens. I think well the Commanders have the number 2 pick in the draft, so they're gonna get a quarterback. I would imagine Sam Howell was not consistent enough this year, and he's been in the system for 2 years and didn't really show any improvement. So that's definitely one to watch for. Also with the Seahawks, have not made any decisions, but they're rumored to hire Ravens DC Mike McDonald.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. Ravens defense was very good this year, and obviously you'd want to hire the guy that was in control of them. Um, especially like just I don't think they allowed a lot of points at all, like so many turnovers. I think you just got to take him as a head coach, just purely off of how good their defense was this year, and it doesn't surprise me that he's being looked at.
Yeah. Last week I mentioned Mike Vrabel because of that defense, and I talked about how Seattle is good when they have a good defense, and bring in the Ravens defensive coordinator. In my opinion, now looking back on it, is probably a better hire than Vrabel, anyways. And the way the Ravens flew around the field this season on defense is something that I think Seattle will embrace and the fans will embrace, and I think that would be a good hire if they choose to go that direction. Now on to some DC and OC hires. The Eagles cleaned house, other than yeah,
Sirianni.
other than Sirianni, and hired Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore.
Yeah, a little upset that the Eagles took my OC favorite for the Browns, but um, yeah, I doesn't shock me. I mean, the Eagles' job for any coordinator is pretty appealing because you have all the talent that they do. And obviously, I feel like if you're if you're a coordinator for them, if you go in and you fix all the problems they had this year, you're definitely going to get looked at as a head
hmm
coach. So I think this is a good way to jumpstart your career if things go well in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I like the Kellen Moore hire to OC. I felt like Kellen Moore was done a little wrong in Dallas. I thought he was a good OC in Dallas, but McCarthy wanted to take over full control of the offense, and he was shipped out of there because of Dak's play on offense and the interceptions. But at the end of the day, we still saw games like that from Dak this year. A lot less, but there was still games like that with McCarthy's system. And I think you point the blame at Dak and not Kellen Moore. And then you go over to the Chargers with a team that Austin Eckler didn't run hard this year. I'm not going to put that on Kellen Moore. On a team that
Got
had
injured
one
a
wide
lot as well.
receiver and Allen can't do everything. Allen was out a couple games, so I don't think that's Kellen Moore's fault that the offense was bad this year in LA. I think that was just a full-on team problem. and I think this is a great hire. I think with Hurts and Brown and Devontae and Swift, I think he has a lot of options to do things there, and I think that's a good fit for the Eagles.
Yeah, I'll say one thing about him when he was in Dallas. I think probably one of the only reasons he got fired is because of the Ezekiel Elliott as like the center thing when you got beat by Dallas or by the 49ers. So I feel like he was probably the scapegoat for that whole situation.
Yeah,
And yeah, like you said, the Chargers, yeah, they didn't, they were not ready to play well with Eckler looking like crap, and then you have Mike
Allen's.
Williams go out
Yep.
with a ACL tear, and then Allen trying his best to be the best wide receiver he can, but he's injured, and and then Herbert gets injured eventually. I mean, yeah, you can't blame that season on him, and I think he's probably going to try to prove a point here in Philadelphia, try to fix all those problems they had with predictable play calling and hopefully on getting right back on track to make a
Yeah.
Super Bowl next year.
Yep. And then your Browns, I'm gonna let you talk on this one. Your Browns hired Ken Dorsey as their OC.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people saying that that was a bad thing. Specifically people in our division. Um, I don't because if you look at the numbers of his production in Buffalo before he got fired, you would see nothing wrong, and you would see
Hmm.
probably one of the best OCs in the NFL. Like I said, he was just another scapegoat for the Bills struggling at the time. I think he got fired after that game in Denver.
Yeah.
Um, that was not. I wouldn't even say that was his fault at all. I think your defense played terrible, and it was just failure for your offensive weapons to make plays when they needed to. So I just think it was a coincidence that he got fired, or coincidence that the offense started to click again when he got fired. I am excited to have him. I think he's really good as a play caller, and I
Yeah.
think the Browns needed that change up from Van Pelt. I mean, Van Pelt was he was just,
Yeah.
it was like hiring a random dude off the couch as your OC. He didn't do anything. So I'm
Hmm.
just happy to have someone that actually does something on our team. So
Yep. And correlating with the Eagles, the Bears also got rid of their OC and DC. I don't understand the DC one unless he's going off to get another job, collegiately or at a professional level. But the OC makes sense a little to me. But at the same time, I talked about last week how the Bears need to um, keep everyone in house and build a team morale and build a team and not just a group of guys that go out and play on a field. So them hiring two new coordinators is weird for me, but I know the Bears are going to trade that number one pick, so it's fine.
yeah, with the Bears signing Shane Waldron as your OC and then Eric Washington as your DC. I think obviously OC was a need because Gretzky was terrible
Hmm.
with the schemes that he ran with that offense. I mean, yeah, I'm not even gonna get into how bad that was. And then yeah, a little weird on the DC. I don't know exactly what the DC thing was. All I saw was that Eric Washington was hired, so I didn't really question what happened to the old
Yeah,
one. But I know that Eberflus is a defensive-minded guy, so I don't know if the DC will get undershadowed. So I think it's just getting two new guys in.
yeah,
I guess we'll see how that works.
yep. And last coaching carousel piece this week, Dan Pitcher becomes the OC of the Bengals. He's been the Bengals quarterback coach for 4 years now. I think for the Bengals, this is a good hire. They decided to stay in house, a guy that has been under Brian Callahan for many years. Brian Callahan's system worked for the Bengals and saw success at times, and so I think just elevating Dan Pitcher up to OC is not a bad call. He's also been there with Burrow for a couple years now, so in the grand scheme of things, I think this is a good hire, staying in house.
Yeah, I think you're just developing an OC that's been in your system, and he's a quarterback's coach ever since Joe Burrow got there. So I mean, that's 4 years of connection with this guy. So I think that was probably the best thing they could have done.
Hmm. So we got a couple more things. I wanted to talk about a little bit of golf this week. Nick Dunlap last week won the American Express tournament, bumping him up 4,053 spots in the official world golf rankings. He decided to turn pro, leaving Alabama early. He's now 63rd in the world, so it would make sense for him to go pro and accept his tour card now. He also is the youngest amateur to win a tour event in 114 years. So basically, you can say ever because nobody was keeping records 114 years ago. And another side note on the PGA Tour, today they implemented a PGA Tour PAC advisory board to help consult with the PGA Tour policy board. I read a couple articles about this, and basically the PGA created a PAC advisory board of 16 players on tour. All looking at it, they're all within the top 45 in the world. Um, Again, this is just another thing to make the tour better and compete against Live. But at the end of the day, this confuses me because the Live and PGA merger is going to happen with the PIF eventually, and is this just like when the Live guys come back on tour? Is this a punishment? Like they're not going to be able to be on this 16-man pack advisory board? I don't know, but they're also using it as a pipeline to, like for instance, Jordan Spieth is off of the PGA Tour policy board February 1st, so one of the 16 players on the pack board will get voted in for his place. So I guess they're creating a little bit of a pipeline to put the people they want in powerful positions on tour. But at the end of the day, I don't see it even being talked about in a couple years because of that Live merger that's going to happen eventually. And I think it's all just going to sizzle out, and this board might not even be a thing in a couple years.
I'm not a golf person. I have nothing to say.
I know you got the next topic.
Okay, so other news in sports. Joe Flacco said earlier this week that he would give DeMar Hamlin his bid for comeback player of the year. He's definitely doing that just so he can look humble. He totally deserves it. That's all I'm
Joe
gonna say.
Joe Flacco's being a nice guy. Um, I know we talked about last week who we thought, but I think this pretty much just seals that DeMar Hamlin's going to be comeback player of the year. So if you want to put your bets in, I would go ahead and put your bets in. Next, Michigan elevates Sharon Moore to head coach. I think for Michigan, yes, this is probably the best available candidate and the best option for you. Obviously, he has the locker room, he has the fans, he's backed by everyone. But I feel bad for the situation he's going into coming off a national championship and the wins he had down the stretch last year against Penn State and Ohio State. I think he's going to be overwhelmed. Losing 20 plus prospects to the draft or graduation, and then along with having a new quarterback, Edwards stays at running back, so he's going to have a running back, um, three offensive linemen going to the draft, and your whole defense. You only have one. In my opinion, Graham, their best defensive player, is the only player coming back. I think it'll be interesting in Ann Arbor next year, but I definitely think Michigan made the right decision elevating him and not searching into the coach's carousel.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't have much to say other than I think he was probably the best thing you would have gotten. I mean, he had 2 big wins last year, and got them in prime position to make the playoffs. So you're definitely the best head coach out there for Michigan. And then I just wanted to touch on this a little bit because it is next weekend. It's going to be Sunday. You're going to have the opening race of the NASCAR season. It's going to be Clash at the Coliseum. I just wanted to touch on it a little bit just because it's such a long season. I probably won't mention it much, but I'll probably just every week skim the race and give the betting favorites and who I think is probably going to win the race. So the top 5 betting favorites to win this week: Martin Truex Jr. Has the best odds at plus 800, and then close is Kyle Larson in second with plus 850, and then you have William Byron at plus 900, and then Kyle Busch at plus 900, and then you have the defending champion Ryan Blaney at plus 1,000.
Do
So
you have any picks for that?
yeah, I was going to say I probably would give this to Kyle Busch. Not really anything in particular. I think he just has more experience. Truex has been around the block too. I just think these top 5 are all good at tracks like this. I mean, it's a short track, so
Hmm.
short tracks are kind of chaotic just because it's so short, a lot of crashes. So I mean, it wouldn't shock me if anyone on this list I just mentioned is not the winner, but I would say I think Kyle Busch will win.
Yeah, and with it being the first weekend of the year, anyways, coming into it, you really don't know what cars are running fast right now and what improvements have been made over the offseason. So you really don't have a clear idea of what's going to happen. You just have an understanding of what happened last year and how that might correlate over to the start of this year. And
Yep.
then last segment of the pod, we're going to start doing this at the end of every podcast. We want to create a game against each other, and we're going to call it the booth battles. So the way this works, we're going to pick 3 sports every week, and we're going to use betting odds that we find on the internet, and we are going to take those odds, add 500 to them, divide by 2, and that's how much points we would get if we get it. So this week we have NFL, NHL, and NASCAR, and we're both going to make one lock that we think is going to happen this week.
Yeah, so I'm going to go first with the NFL. Like I said earlier, I think Mahomes is going to have one of the best games of his career. I'm taking him plus 300 passing yards in the Super Bowl, which is plus 250 on DraftKings.
And then for me, I am taking Brock Purdy over 1 interception. It's minus 105, so I didn't take the longest odds, but I know that this series is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So NHL, we decided to pick 2 games there on Wednesday. I took Kraken Sharks over 6 goals. The NHL this year, if you're not watching, has been the most offensive season in recent history. Teams are scoring at rates that they've never scored at before, and over you're seeing games that are reaching 10 goals, which is insane, and I would have never thought that, but it's making hockey a lot more fun to watch, and fans are really invested. The hockey is reaching out to new fans now, and I think overall, mine's gonna hit. So
Okay, well, I would like to mention that we probably should do some NHL on here. I don't know hockey that well. I didn't grow up around hockey, so I'm probably gonna try to get the basics down so I can maybe talk a little bit about it because I feel like they deserve some love. Um, but my bet is over 6.5 goals in the Senators versus Red Wings game, which is minus 130.
and last, NASCAR. We're just gonna make our picks on who we think are gonna win. The shots of this happening are so low, but I took William Byron to win the Clash this weekend at plus 900. Um, I play with him on NASCAR, so I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, I chose, like I said earlier, Kyle Busch to win the Clash. There is really no logic behind it. I just think Kyle Busch is he deserves one. He had a pretty rough year last year, so I
Yeah.
think he deserves one.
So we're gonna be accumulating these up every week and letting you know at the end of every pod what the points are at, what the rankings at, and then what our picks are. But that's all we got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.